From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
A very important lesson.
I'm Charles Denny. Kids will be back in school soon, and for some first and second graders in Tennessee, they'll be learning about money. That story from Blount County, Tennessee, coming up on AgDay.
As Russia and Ukraine ink a deal to get grain moving again on the Black Sea.
The beacon of hope on the Black Sea is shining bright today.
But is it rooted in reality?
More questions than answers.
So there's a lot of roadblocks to it.
We break down the deal and what it means for farmers here at home right now on AgDay. Good morning and thanks for joining us for AgDay. I'm Michelle Rook in for Clinton Griffiths, who's got the day off. Well, Russian and Ukrainian officials have signed an agreement that will finally get exports of grain moving through the Black Sea region of Ukraine. It's an effort to end food security threats around the world that were brought on by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Ukraine, Russia, Turkey, and the UN Secretary General signing the deal in Istanbul. Under the deal, Ukraine would be allowed to ship 5 million tons of grain a month, and Russia will be able to export grain and fertilizer. The vessels will be monitored by a joint coordination center, which will be established in Istanbul and include representatives from Ukraine, Russia, Turkey, and the UN. Ships will be inspected before they arrive in Ukraine to ensure they're not carrying weapons. But despite the deal, there is no indication of an end to the war.
This is an unprecedented agreement between two parties engaged in bloody conflict. But that conflict continues, and people are dying every day, and fighting is raging every day. The beacon of hope on the Black Sea is shining bright today thanks to the collective efforts of so many. In these trying and turbulent times for the region and all globe, let that beacon guide the way towards easing human suffering and securing peace.
But what is the real potential for Ukrainian exports under the deal? I talked with industry leaders here in the U.S. about the potential. The Ukrainian Grain Association projects this season's production to be down 35% and exports 50 to 60%. USDA reports Ukraine's monthly exports pre-war were from 5 to 7 million tons per month, but Ukraine has only exported 4 million tons since the war began in March, 2 million of that in June. So how much could exports rebound with this deal?
So at least the potential is somewhere between 2.1 million metric tons and back to that 5 to 7 million metric tons. But again, we've got a lot of things that we don't know.
Before the deal, Ukrainian Grain Association officials predicted very little crop would be planted for the 2023 season. So Meyer says while input prices and availability will be a challenge, this puts Ukrainian farmers in a better position.
Opening up the ports would reduce that transportation cost and allow those farmers to get a little better price for those goods, maybe a lot better price for those goods, and become a little bit more profitable. And that would change their view on production for the fall.
As for the impact on U.S. exports, Meyer expects only a slight near-term effect.
It will bring us perhaps a little more competition on the corn side, if that corn becomes available and over a time frame which might match our own harvest. There's some potential there. I think wheat perhaps less so.
Market analysts, though, are more skeptical about Russia upholding the deal and how quickly exports could move due to the damage to the ports.
There's got to be some rebuilding. There's got to be personnel moved back in. I don't know that the shipping carriers are going to allow it, or the insurance providers are going to allow it to begin with. So there's a lot of roadblocks to it.
Yet Ukraine's deputy ag minister is more optimistic, saying they can quickly restart exports. And Ukraine was losing about $170 million a day with 100% of the export ports blocked. So now they may be able to at least export the product in the 70 ships stranded in the ports, as well as some of the 20 million tons of grain stuck in silos at the Odessa port. But what do Ukrainian ag watchers think of the deal? Ag Market Consulting spoke with Elena Nerova. She's a commodity analyst from Ukraine. Earlier this year, she was able to evacuate the country with her son. She says while she wants the deal to work, she remains pessimistic, and there's a lot of work to do to get things moving.
So it's still quite dangerous because of floating mines. Probably in the next 2 weeks, we will see how those vessels which are stuck in Ukrainian ports, I mean, Great Odessa ports, before the war, will pass. And after then, we will see how the situation will develop.
Yaroba also pointing out that Russia is only agreeing not to bomb grain ships in Ukrainian ports. She says there are no safety guarantees for Ukrainian farmers harvesting the grain or delivering it to port. But accusations continue to fly about Russia stealing grain from Ukraine. Reuters using this satellite image from Planet Labs PBC taken last month. It says it shows the Russian ship SV Nikolay at a grain terminal in Crimea, which is in the Ukrainian peninsula that Russia seized in 2014. It reports the ship was carrying corn in June. The ship's documentation, however, says that the grain was loaded at a port in Russia and then taken to the Turkish port of Izmir. Ukrainian officials have accused Russia of stealing grain and then exporting it via Crimea to Turkey and Syria. They believe the Nikolay is among the ships exporting what they call looted grain. Moscow is denying the accusations. After a hot, dry week for much of the Corn Belt last week, is there finally some relief on the way this week? Meteorologist Matt Yurosavik joins us with an update.
Yeah, Michelle, more rain is on the way for parts of the Corn Belt, but still going to be hot and humid in the east, very hot and dry back in the west. If we take a look at the jet stream heading through this week, still looking at a very big ridge set up in the western United States, and you can see all those deep dark red colors in the southern United States as well, dealing with that heat, that humidity, and temperatures closing in on 100 degrees again for parts of next week. Here's a look at the temperatures along the west coast, northern California, northern Nevada, all the way up into parts of Washington state, dealing with much above normal temperatures, and the same thing goes from East Texas all the way up into the mid-Atlantic states, with still very warm conditions expected for parts of the Corn Belt there and the Ohio Valley as well. But more rain on the way for at least Monday, and then as we head into the second half of the week, the Corn Belt really starts to see some of that rain. A system moving through the east going to bring those scattered showers and thunderstorms through, and then back in the southwest. That's where we get those afternoon pop-up showers and thunderstorms that have been helping the drought conditions back in the west as we kind of went over the last week or two, and that's going to continue through this week and into next week as well. And we love to see this wheat harvest. Lee Peterson sharing this video from Montana. He says there's just something about being able to stop for a minute to watch the combines work. Certainly a beautiful scene. I'll have more on your forecast coming up.
Happening right now, one of the 10 busiest container ports in the U.S. is effectively shut down right now due to a strike by independent truckers. The strike now entering a second week. The truckers are protesting a California bill, a so-called gig economy law. It hasn't been enforced yet, but would make it harder for companies to classify workers as independent contractors instead of employees. Demonstrators who own and operate their own trucks say the law will make it even harder for them to make a living. Port officials have urged an end to the protests, saying it's harming operations already stressed by supply chain issues. Blue Diamond Almond Growers is reportedly shifting some 400 containers per week of exports from the port of Oakland to the ports of LA and Long Beach. Corn futures hit 6-month lows, wheat 5-month lows as Ukraine and Russia reached a deal to allow exports. We'll have all the details coming up with Kent Beadle. And later, making the most of your money. Young students get some real-life lessons in the country.
AgDay is brought to you by the End Zone by Farm Shop MFG, which allows you to rehydrate your soybeans from 10 to 13%. On a 20,000 bushel bin, that's an extra semi-load added to your bottom line. Order your End Zone fan control by July 31st and receive $200 off.
Joining us with market analysis, Kent Beadle with CHS Hedging. A lower day on Friday in both the corn and wheat market, kind of reacting to this export deal to allow Ukrainian exports. Did we get overdone, and did we do too much technical damage that we can't recover?
Well, I think ultimately we can recover, but I think the technical damage is important that we had on Friday, and I do believe that this week is going to be a week where we see some follow through unless our forecasts turn back to the hot and dry side.
And what do you think about the forecast? Soybeans, after a little bit of an August forecast looking a little warmer and drier, did the market more respect that, do you think?
Well, I think so, because August is very important for soybean yields. And with some heat coming back in the extended part, the 8 to 14 day, and especially hotter the first 5 days of August as we see them, it does bring some concern to the soybean traders because we make our yields in August.
Has the corn market taken out too much weather premium?
I think that it probably has. We're going to be watching very closely to see the amount of moisture that we get over this weekend, because the systems so far this year have not been general. They've been somewhat scattered, bringing lots of rainfall to some areas and very little to others. We had that pattern last year as well, and ultimately it ended up in uneven yields and lower than expected yields. And if that happens again, we've probably taken too much weather premium out of the market.
So Kent, funds have done a lot of liquidation in commodities on recession fears. We're going into the Fed meeting on Wednesday. Do you think we'll see more liquidation, or how will we position?
Well, the speculators are still very concerned about recession, so they're going to be watching very closely to the tone of the press conference that Chairman Powell gives next week. Obviously, we're also going to wait and see just how big of an interest rate increase we're going to have. 75 basis points is assumed by the trade right now. Okay. Some of the Fed chairmen have thrown cold water on the idea that we're going to have a larger increase than that. So it might be that the recession fears are already priced in.
All right, thanks so much. Kent Beadle joining us, EHS Hedging. More Ag Day coming up.
Your next piece of equipment is on MachineryPete.com. Search equipment from dealerships across the country to find what you're looking for. Only on MachineryPete.com.
Meteorologist Matt Yurosavik is in with a look at our ag weather and some good news. Some rain on the way. Are some of those drought areas going to finally get some of that?
Oh yeah, parts of the Southwest, right through the middle of the country, and especially parts of the Corn Belt, the eastern Corn Belt. It's been pretty dry lately. We're going to see a lot more rain there, especially for the second half of this week. And you can see that here as we look at the precipitation expected for this week. A large area right through parts of the Southwest, through the middle part of the country, and right on up into the Ohio Valley, eastern parts of the Corn Belt, and into New England, dealing with above average rainfall here. Below normal, though, up in the Pacific Northwest, as well as parts of northern Florida and the Southeast, after all that rain they've seen over the past couple of weeks. So here's a look at the precipitation as we head through this week. And you're going to see a lot more of this right through here, eastern Corn Belt down to the Ohio Valley, as a couple of storm systems likely to set up later on in the week. More scattered showers and storms along the Gulf Coast and parts of Florida. And pretty unsettled in the upper Midwest, as well as parts of the Four Corners region, dealing with those afternoon scattered showers and storms, and even just a couple of those through the week are going to add up. So more rainfall on the way. Pretty damp across the lower 48, it looks like, as we head through this week. And that's going to help this right here. These drought conditions expanding slowly in parts of the Corn Belt, extreme to exceptional drought back there in the Southwest. We're going to see some of this able to be helped as we head through this week, especially right through the middle part of the country with more of that rain expected. But temperature still going to be warm. We've seen it the last couple of weeks, still much above normal back in the west and along the Gulf Coast all the way up the eastern seaboard as well. So we're going to be keeping an eye on the heat and the humidity in the east. Notice the jet stream here. We have this hot air all down into the south, back up the west coast. That's not going anywhere. A couple of dips in the jet stream may give the upper Midwest, parts of the northern Great Lakes, a little bit of a break from that heat and humidity. But into next week, that ridge still not going anywhere. Next week, though, more rain expected. Much of the same areas here. Parts of the mid-Atlantic all the way back to the Southwest. And then with the temperatures, most of the lower 48 going to be above normal, and we'll continue to keep an eye on the temperatures and those drought conditions right here on Ag Day. That's a look around the country. Now let's take a look at the weather where you live. La Bella, Florida, scattered thunderstorms, a high near 92 degrees. Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, sunny and hot, a high near 104. And Flagstaff, Arizona, thunderstorms likely, a high near 77.
Thanks, Matt. Up next, Machinery Pete has an update on what he's seeing in the used equipment market.
Hey, stay tuned, folks. Coming up, we're going to talk about a tractor that sold at auction in Iowa last week.
Machinery Pete has seen hundreds of 8420s go on the auction block over the years, but even he is surprised by the record prices being paid for them right now.
Well, John Deere started making the 8420 model tractor 20 years ago in the year 2002. Just made it for a few years, up through 2005. And I tell you, the first 8420s I ever sold at auction, there were a pair of them on the same day, April 9th of 2003 in Mason City, Iowa on a dealer auction. Now, they were both 2002 models. Had just over 600 hours. One brought $94,000. The other one went for 101. And I tell you, last Thursday, I saw the highest auction price I've ever seen on an 8420, and I've seen, I think, 352 of them now the last 20 years. The sale last Thursday was in Delta, Iowa. It was an online farm retirement auction by our good friends at Sullivan Auctioneers. It was this very sharp 2005 model, 2,827 hours on it. It sold for $182,000 again. That's a record high auction price, and it's a record by $15,000. The previous record was this 8420, which sold a year ago, just July 8th, 2021, on a farm auction in Sleepy Eye, Minnesota that we filmed for our Machinery Pete TV show. And that one had 1,760 hours on it. I think it was an 03 model, and again, it went for 167. So the one last Thursday in Delta, Iowa, 15,000 over the record. Now, I'm just continuing to see this on good condition used tractors, and really here's the underlying reason why, folks. The supply and demand is just it's out of whack right now. This is a chart from our machinerypete.com website. The blue line is supply of 175 plus horse tractors for sale. The orange line is search traffic demand, folks shopping, and you can see they're going in opposite directions. And actually, there's only 13 8420s listed for sale today at machinerypete.com. So that explains why when a nice one like last Thursday shows up for sale, $182K.
Thanks, Pete. It's even more important than ever these days to make that dollar stretch farther. And students in Tennessee soon will be learning some important lessons about money, thanks to a new program in the country.
Registration is open for the 2022 Pro Farmer Crop Tour. Join our team as we gain insight on the 2022 growing season in person or online. Visit profarmercroptour.com/register to select the stop nearest you.
It won't be long and kids will be back in the classroom. As Charles Denny reports, some Tennessee grade school students will be learning lessons about the value of money.
Sometimes maybe you shouldn't get the most expensive thing.
It's not every day the Prez of UT swings by for story time. But here, Randy Boyd is reading You Can't Buy a Dinosaur with a Dime. The UT system leader was one of the guest readers during Money Week at Blount County's Union Grove Elementary.
80, 90, 100. Okay.
Children learn skip counting, how to determine different currencies and denominations, and how money can be saved, spent, or used. And get the audience here, very young, first and second graders.
Money is really easy if you get to know it, like you have to count it.
The younger we can start teaching children about money, the more likely they are to make good money decisions in the future.
Chris Sneed helped develop the Money Week lessons, which include books about money read 5 days in a row. Kids are quickly gaining cognitive and academic skills at this age, and there can be a tie-in between financial knowledge and literacy.
So we worked with the librarian and some teachers at a local school in Knox County to actually help us identify some grade level, age appropriate children's books that had a money theme.
Here, children learn how cash has value. They also learn math skills in counting currency and hear about the difference between needs and wants.
And add to that list concepts of greater than and less than. The Tennessee Financial Literacy Commission sponsored the program in 12 counties, and there are plans to expand this coming school year. Building good money habits will be important for these youngsters, and a head start on learning those skills could pay off in the future. This is Charles Denny reporting.
That's all the time we have for this morning. Thanks for watching. For all of us here at AgDay, have yourself a great day.